My phone buzzed again. Another urgent text. Another command dressed up as family concern. Maya, you will attend Lila's wedding. If you don't, tuition support stops immediately. Call your father now. I let it sit on my sleek glass desk, its vibration echoing in the quiet apartment. I stared out at Chicago's skyline, sunlight glinting off the steel towers 15 floors below, far from the small house in suburban Ohio where I had spent most of my childhood shrinking into the shadows. They didn't know. Not my father, not my mother. No one in my family had any idea that I had already graduated top of my class from a prestigious university, or that I was pulling in a six-figure salary as a data analyst at a top tech firm. I had quietly built my life in Chicago while the family had assumed I was still struggling, still obedient, still the invisible daughter. And now they thought a threat could pull me back into Lila's orbit, the golden child, the sister they adored, celebrated, and spoiled at every turn. I remembered third grade like it was yesterday. Sitting at the scratched oak kitchen table, clutching my report card covered in straight A's, I waited for a smile, a word of praise, any acknowledgement. Mom barely glanced up from her magazine. "That's nice, honey," she said, before turning back to her article. That same night, the living room erupted in cheers. Lila had won a participation ribbon for the school play. Dad beamed with pride, lavishing her with applause and compliments while I slunk away to the stairs, invisible, unnoticed. High school was no better. Sophomore year, I won the regional science competition for analyzing water quality in our town. Empty chairs at the awards ceremony. Mom and Dad had gone to Lila's soccer game. When Lila scored a single goal, the family celebrated for weeks. Me. I was forgotten. Senior year brought acceptance letters. I earned a full scholarship to one of the nation's top universities. Mom fretted that Lila would feel inferior. Dad insisted I stay local. I complied outwardly, inwardly plotting my escape. I had learned early, survival in this family meant invisibility. Now, years later, I had mastered my own independence. My apartment in Chicago was neat, modern, and filled with evidence of a life they could never imagine. Awards, certifications, publications. My achievements were my own, built without anyone noticing or supporting me. My diploma rested on the bookshelf in plain sight. Maya Carter, Bachelor of Science, Data Science, summa cum laude. I opened my banking app, $142,000. Enough to never need them again. Tuition threats didn't touch me. Financial independence was my shield, my secret power, my quiet revenge. Yet here I was, summoned back to the family home for Lila's wedding. My father's tone was commanding even through text, a reminder that in their eyes, I was still the obedient daughter who existed to support the golden child. Arriving at the house the day before the wedding, I took in the transformation. White roses cascaded across the porch, tables arranged with ivory linens, every surface adorned with floral arrangements. Lila floated through the chaos, phone glued to her hand, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Mom rushed toward me with a clipboard, her makeup perfect, hair styled. Dad didn't hug me, he handed me a checklist. Programs to fold. Place cards to arrange. Flowers to finish. This is your duty. Your sister's wedding. Now move. I smiled politely and took the clipboard, every movement precise. They had expected me to bend, to serve without question, to disappear into my role as the invisible daughter. They had no idea that I had spent years preparing myself for this exact moment. A return, not a subordinate, but as the one who held the leverage they could no longer control. Lila, radiant as ever, was oblivious. She still believed in the narrative our parents had created. She was perfect, unstoppable, while I was the quiet, supportive sister. It had never occurred to her that I had been quietly building my own empire, earning respect in a world where intelligence and independence mattered far more than charm or participation ribbons. Dinner brought its own tension. Lila's fiancé, Jacob, dominated conversation. Successful entrepreneur, charming, persuasive. Dad hung on his every word. Something didn't sit right. My instincts, honed over years of unnoticed brilliance, flared. Jacob's stories didn't add up. I made a mental note. This wasn't just about a wedding. There was a danger lurking, one my family would be blind to unless I acted. Later, in the quiet of my childhood bedroom, I reviewed financial records. Money I had earned and saved over the years had been quietly siphoned to fund Lila's lifestyle. Lessons, trips, lavish gifts, while I had been denied support. Tuition had been threatened, but all along, my independence had already freed me. Every dollar taken was a reminder. This family had always celebrated the golden child at my expense. The next morning, I invited Lila for coffee in the small cafe nearby. I had prepared a careful plan: help her navigate the day, protect her from embarrassment, but expose the structural favoritism she had never noticed. "You're ready," I said, sliding a notebook across the table. "But you need to know the scholarship panel may ask questions you aren't prepared for. You have to answer honestly. No fluff." Lila blinked, confused. "I thought you were helping me shine." "I'm helping you succeed," I replied. "Your success has to be real. It has to survive scrutiny, or it won't last." Her expression faltered. For a moment, the golden child seemed unsure, vulnerable. She had always assumed the world would praise her, protect her, even when undeserved. I saw the cracks forming, and I knew my next moves had to be precise. Back at the house, I organized the place cards and arranged the programs with meticulous care, all the while listening and observing. Every smile my parents gave, every glance they shared with Lila, told me what I already knew. They valued appearances over truth. I had spent my life ignored, dismissed, and undervalued, but I had learned patience, strategy, and timing. That night, alone in my childhood bedroom, I traced my fingers over old textbooks and notebooks. Memories of long nights studying, alone, while Lila attended parties and lessons, flooded back. I whispered to the empty room. "Tomorrow, they will see me. Not the daughter they could control, but the woman I've become. Invisible no more." The wedding was less than 24 hours away. My plan had to be flawless. I would attend, help when necessary, but on my terms. I would protect Lila from potential humiliation, reveal the truth about my family's favoritism, and reclaim the respect I had been denied for decades. Tomorrow the invisible daughter would return, but this time she would be seen. The morning of Lila's wedding, I woke to the soft sunlight spilling across my Chicago apartment. My phone vibrated with messages, frantic texts from my mother, reminders from my father, desperate pleas from the wedding planner. They didn't know I had already anticipated every potential crisis. Every wedding hiccup they thought they could rely on me for had been calculated, planned, and accounted for. I dressed carefully, not for their approval but for my own sense of authority. A tailored navy blazer, crisp white blouse, black trousers, sharp, commanding, unmistakable. I glanced at my reflection, Maya Carter, no longer invisible, no longer pliable, no longer the daughter who could be threatened or dismissed. Arriving at the Reynolds family estate, the house had transformed into a wedding magazine spread. White roses cascaded down the staircase, ivory linens covered every table, and golden candles flickered across the reception hall. Lila, radiant in her dress, floated through the chaos, clipboard in hand, phone glued to her ear. She smiled at me politely, innocent, unknowing, unaware of the storm brewing beneath her perfect day. Mom approached immediately, makeup flawless, hair perfectly arranged. "Maya. Finally. I need you to help with the seating charts and gift table arrangements. Your father is very anxious. And Lila." I held up a hand. "Mom, I'm here to help, but only under my terms." Her face faltered, confusion flickering. "Your terms?" "Yes. I will assist with anything logistical, anything that ensures the wedding runs smoothly, but no financial matters. No co-signing. No emptying accounts. And I'm not attending any community functions afterward to prop up appearances. Those are my boundaries." Mom blinked. She had always believed boundaries were walls, punishments, or refusals. For the first time, she realized they could also be rules for respect. Dad appeared from his study, clipboard in hand, reading glasses perched on his nose. Maya, this is absurd. You will do as you're told. Lila's wedding. I interrupted, calm but firm. Dad, I'm not here to be ordered around. I'm here to ensure Lila's day goes perfectly, but I am not the invisible daughter you can manipulate. Tuition threats don't work anymore. I am independent. I am successful. And I will act accordingly. His face flushed crimson. Shock, anger, disbelief. You've changed, he muttered. Yes. And it's time you acknowledge it. The first task, checking the gift table. I moved with precision, adjusting envelopes, arranging the gifts so that nothing looked cluttered or messy. Lila hovered nearby, blissfully unaware that I had secretly verified every guest list, budget allocation, and timing schedule. She didn't know I had spent months preparing contingency plans for disasters they didn't see coming. Vendors late, florists understaffed, caterers behind schedule. Every scenario had a solution, except for the one I had deliberately kept hidden, the truth about Jacob. Jacob, Lila's fiancé, had always seemed charming, perfect, the golden match. But a series of subtle inconsistencies during dinner had set off alarms in my analytical mind. Offshore accounts with sketchy partners, unverifiable investment returns, contradictory stories about business ventures. It was the perfect storm waiting to happen. And tomorrow at the wedding, my family would finally see it. Throughout the day, I watched, listened, calculated. Every glance from my parents, every sigh from Lila, every nervous twitch from vendors, it all fed into my mental map of control. They believed they controlled the narrative, but I had spent years quietly rewriting the rules. Today was the day those rules would be enforced. At one point, I overheard a heated whisper in the kitchen. Are you sure about this second mortgage, Harold? Mom's voice trembled. I'm concerned. I froze. They had taken out a second mortgage, without my knowledge, to fund Jacob's lavish wedding plans. And now, it seemed, the money was at risk. My pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the thrill of control. This was the leverage I had been waiting for. When the rehearsal dinner began that evening, Jacob's charm dominated the room. Investors, friends, family, all hanging on his every word. Dad was completely enthralled. But I had done my homework. While everyone else admired, I saw the cracks. Offshore accounts, hidden transfers, unverifiable partnerships. It was a web of lies carefully disguised with charm. During a quiet moment, I excused myself and pulled up my laptop in the library. I cross-referenced his claims, piecing together evidence that would be impossible for my family to ignore. Screenshots, bank statements, testimonials from past clients, every dot connected. I printed everything carefully, organizing it into neat folders labeled, Jacob Lawrence, Pattern of Fraud. By the time I returned to the dining hall, my pulse was steady. I had the truth. And soon, my family would see it. Dinner was a delicate balance of civility and tension. Lila chatted happily about the floral arrangements, the menu, her plans for the honeymoon. Dad asked about the investment opportunities Jacob mentioned. Mom nodded along, nervous but polite. I waited for the right moment. Timing was everything. Finally, as Lila excused herself to check on the cake display, I stepped forward. Dad, Mom, I need you to see this, I said, setting the folder carefully on the dining table. My hands were steady, my voice calm, measured. Dad's eyebrows shot up. Maya, what is this? I opened the first folder. Screenshots of offshore accounts. Transfer records. Jacob's previous failed ventures. Statements from women he had engaged with before, all claiming similar patterns of deception. Jacob Lawrence, I said, deliberately slow, has a history of defrauding families just like ours. He disappears shortly before weddings, taking large sums of money under the guise of investments. The room went silent. Lila's face paled, mascara streaking from frantic tears. Mom clutched her pearls, staring at me as if I had grown a second head. Dad's face went from red to pale to rigid. Impossible, Dad muttered. No, not impossible, I said. Verifiable. Documented. And I have cross-checked everything. The money in our accounts, the wedding funds, even the second mortgage, they're all vulnerable. Lila gasped. Maya, you're saying? I'm saying, I replied. I warned you. You didn't listen. I've given you one chance to avoid disaster before tomorrow. That's why I'm here, to protect you, yes, but not at the cost of my own autonomy or finances. I will help, but only under my terms. Shock, anger, and disbelief rippled across their faces. They had spent decades treating me as invisible, obedient, and compliant. Now I was the authority. I was the protector, the strategist, the woman they could no longer control. Mom finally whispered. Maya, how did you? I've been independent for years, I said simply. I've earned my own way. I've prepared for this moment. I'm no longer the child you could threaten or manipulate. I am visible, capable, and respected outside this house. And it's time you see that. That night, as I prepared for the wedding day, I reviewed my plan one last time. Vendors were coordinated. Financial safeguards were in place. Lila would have her perfect day, but now with eyes open. Tomorrow, my family would finally acknowledge the invisible daughter who had been working quietly, brilliantly, all these years. For the first time, I slept without fear. I slept as a woman in control, as a daughter who had rewritten the rules, as Maya, the visible, unstoppable force they had ignored for too long. Moral lessons. The story of Maya teaches us that true self-worth comes from within, not from the approval or recognition of others. Even when overshadowed and undervalued, it is possible to build your life, achieve your goals, and gain independence on your own terms. Setting clear boundaries is not an act of cruelty but a demonstration of self-respect, showing that your time, resources, and efforts are valuable and must be honored. It also reminds us that loyalty and love should not come at the cost of personal dignity, and that courage, intelligence, and patience can empower you to protect those you care about while standing firmly for yourself. Ultimately, the story reinforces that being seen and respected begins with claiming your own voice and refusing to be invisible.